I've gone through the stage where I went into my first primary school and I was the third black hair, straight hair kid in school. The two before me were born in New Zealand. They don't understand any Chinese or any Mandarin or Cantonese. And I was literally the only one in school that did not understand any English apart from hello, goodbye, and apple. So that was when I went to school and there was, one Chinese kid. Till when I was about college, there were almost 20% Chinese students in my college. So things have changed a lot in the past 20 years. And at the same time, we also have seen that there is a lot more Kiwi. Our Kiwi friends have then expanded and tried to study and to live abroad, and especially in China. So today we actually have a panel it's a very interesting mix. So the three not so Asian looking friends here are the Kiwis that are brave and courage and just, and actually went into China mainland to study, to travel, and to experience firsthand, in themselves. And on the other side, we have Monica. Monica is very similar to myself, Chinese obviously, and then have been studied, living and now working in New Zealand. So all four of them will introduce themselves, and then we'll go to some questions. But we'll start with Imogen because she is leaving at 15:15, so we'll get her to introduce herself.
I went on exchange in Shanghai's Fudan University and Dalian University of Foreign Languages, both are one semester each. But before I delve into that, I want to thank PMSA for the scholarships they provided for the 2 exchanges. Thanks, guys. Alright, good quality picture. Fudan University was my first exchange experience in 2015 and was my first time travelling abroad by myself. So prior to arriving in Shanghai, I was terrified. I wasn't sure what to expect, how I'd handle the foreign environment, how I'd deal with complete immersion in the language I'd only been studying for 2 years at the point. But I needn't have worried. I absolutely loved my time in Fudan, with the welcoming staff, engaging classes, and the many friendships I formed. Of these friendships, most were fellow international students, which was hard not to form like that because we're all in an international dorm with each other. But this was something I hadn't anticipated. I'd formed friendships with people from Finland, America, Russia, and so on. And I experienced the same exposure to other cultures apart from the local Chinese culture, also in Dalian. But I must admit, in Dalian it was a lot easier to form friendships with local students, as due to Dalian's focus on learning foreign languages, there was many Chinese students who wanted to practice English, and I wanted to practice Chinese, so it was a match made in heaven. The wider city of Dalian was also quite different to Shanghai. Oh, this is Shanghai pictures. Favorite market, the Qilao Watertown city in Shanghai. One of the many cats. And me. It was quite different to Shanghai in that it was so close to Russia, so it gave me all these new sights. You could see in the architecture, the Russian elements and the food, and interactions with others. For instance, when exploring Dalian city, older people would often come up to me and start speaking Russian, and the first time it happened I was terrified. I just forgotten all my Chinese knowledge. So I was glad to know I didn't actually know that language. Both exchanges did wonders for my Chinese language learning. In the classroom, when my first time at Fudan, I wasn't too confident in my Chinese, and I only took one class taught in Chinese, which in the end the teacher sort of gave up on us, so I taught it in English mostly. Sorry, Lasha. But by the time my Dalian exchange rolled around earlier this year, I was learning all in Chinese, and that was great. And it did prove challenging at times, but I enjoyed the challenge. The situation outside the classroom was also great for Chinese language learning. As you're completely immersed in it, you had no choice but to say, oh, I have to ask in Chinese where the toilet is, because this could be bad. Fudan was particularly great with its easy access to the city centre, as it allowed for conversations with a wide range of people not just connected to the university. On the other hand, Dalian's isolated setting, it's an hour and so away from the city centre, was actually helpful because it meant it wasn't very easy to procrastinate and go into the city centre, so I had to study. It was great. That isolation also linked to a sense of community, a home away from home, as the area around Dalian, people began to know my name, began to relate, oh, that girl, she always orders the cakes, his favourite orders coming in. Both exchanges also served to improve my self-confidence, but not in public speaking, as you can probably tell today. I would often seize the chance to travel alone, finding it a filling experience. And I think I forgot to put these in order. I travelled to Harbin for their Ice and Snow International Festival, which was amazing. Then I went to Jinan, Tianjin, that's me with the TF boys in Beijing. Pingshui's rice terraces, which was gorgeous. Yangshuo with the, what's the bird's name? With the traditional fishing with the birds. It's amazing, but I think PTA would have a little bit of an issue with it, but I loved it. And then that's all. Thank you guys.
Like, oh, there's a lot of local students coming up to you and wanted to practice English. I was one of them when I was young. So I left China when I was 17. It was my last year of high school studies when I came to New Zealand. I mean, I've been here, I don't want to tell you because then you'll figure out my age. So I've been here forever. It was not my original plan to stay on because I initially came to New Zealand to do my undergrad degree, and then I was wanting to then study in France, do my master's. For personal reason, I can share with you, it's okay. I met my first boyfriend at my last year of university. As you expect, you give up love, you give up other things. Sorry, the other way around, sorry. I think I was a romantic person in a relationship anyway, so I decided I want to stay and really get to know the country. Up to that point, I guess for me, as you can tell, my university days were way behind me, so I want to focus on talking more about my experience and how I came to work in the field of where I am now, rather than going on the uni days, because so I decided I want to stay, and New Zealand was a perfect fit for me. I really liked this outdoor sports and then all the country that has to offer. And it was really quiet at the time. There weren't many Asian restaurants or a lot of Asian community as compared to today. But I felt I was really grateful and lucky because when I was new to the country, I lived with a homestay family, as most of you would. There were two sisters that they looked after me really well, and in the family, I was just one of the lucky ones. And I stayed on with the family and then until university ends. Initially I studied psychology and commerce, and I decided commerce wasn't for me. My family back home in China, all of them in business, and I was like, why do I have to pay money where I can just learn off my family and have them kind of coaching me? So then I swapped that with law, but then I didn't complete my law study at University of Auckland. I found the reading was horrendous. My English wasn't that good at the time, and you can imagine the piles of papers, law papers you have to go through. I just wasn't confident. I was really good. I got B+ in the end for legal study, but then I just thinking I wouldn't survive carry on from there. My first job was actually in psychology. It was really obvious because that's why I carried on and complete my degree in the field. I'd gone for a lot of job hunting. I applied for millions of jobs because being a foreign student, at the time I was an international student, zero work experience in the field, even though I have always worked, I was working part-time in restaurants because then I get free food and drinks. I worked as a teacher's assistant, because for me it was quite a struggle initially learning the language, even though I loved English before I came to New Zealand, and then they're just all gone out of the window. They have quite a thick accent when I saw it initially, but now I love it. People say I sound like local, but I don't know. So I think I always worked during my university days, which probably encouraged me to just keep looking for opportunities. And I went to this career expo, I still remember it dearly, just like out of my millions job interviews, and one occasion I met someone from the company I got interviewed for, and that's where I got my first job. And the lady told me her impression of me was I was outspoken, I was brave, I approached some strangers, and then obviously the way she saw me was, oh, maybe this girl deserved an opportunity to work. And that's how my first career kind of started. Did not take me long to figure out maybe psychology was a bit too much for new young graduates. As you can imagine, I only worked with people who got problems. If you're not happy, if you're happy with your life, you will not go see psychologists or go to clinics, right? Same as if you're not sick, you're not going to hospital. That's why a lot of people do not like hospitals. So I figured it was too serious, and I was quite young, lack of life experience, and I was constantly questioning myself, who the heck am I to counsel people who were like 20, 30 years senior than me, who had a whole life to live, and who am I telling you what to do and how to live their life. But anyway, so it was a lot of conflicts, and then I decided I want to take a break from it, and was a little bit lost, not knowing what to do, and I did my master's, and it didn't help. I thought that would help clarify my vision in terms of career paths. So coming out of that, I just decided I'll just get whatever job I can get that sounds remotely interesting. And then during the time I was studying, I worked in Internal Affairs office, and then I went from national branch to the local councils. I was working in the Auckland Council for another 3 years. That was a very interesting experience. I worked with communities, Chinese communities especially, Asian communities. I worked on events. That's when I started emceeing. It just came out because I speak English and Chinese, and I've always since then been emceeing for lantern festivals and conference, and yeah, there's one coming up tomorrow. So I might see some of you there. And then that's me. I felt really lucky because it's more opportunity found me. And I was organizing a lot of events for council for that another 3.5 years. Later, I decided this is too much fun, not enough, seriousness, because in your life you can party all the time, but then at one point in time you're just like, I want to quit partying. I want to do something that's meaningful, that's helpful to you and to your family or friends or people you knew. And then I found my passion of my life, which is in filmmaking. I'm sorry I haven't got a presentation because I only just flew in literally yesterday. I came early before the red party because I want to be here, and I've got a few other things to sort here. So how I found that? So after council, I decided, like I said, I want to move into something that that probably can give me both the satisfaction of enjoying my work as well as bringing the income. So I quit the council, had 1 week gap before I started the next job. That was 4 years ago, so they start filming this one film you've probably heard of, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the second film in Auckland. There was a massive project, there's like more than 1,000 people involved in the whole project, and then the production team approached me again, knocked on my door. That at the time I didn't know what to expect. It wasn't my intention to go into something that completely foreign to what I was trained for. And then lucky enough, I decided I would take on the challenge since I was lost and not knew what's going on with my life, and then not knowing at the time that I would love this job. So yeah, a few months later, I came out from the other end thinking this is the most amazing work experience I've ever had, and that fits me perfectly. So from then on, yeah, I stayed in the filmmaking, so from time to time, I get given different roles, and then I'm still working on it now. And I guess for me, career is something you have to be true to yourself. We can have a job and we can have a passion, but sometimes I think for us, we have to constantly search to match your passion and match a job. So, I mean, I know I've been spending a lot of time searching, as you can hear. I could probably up to like 10 years looking for something that I both enjoy and I both love doing. Like for the film job, I do get up super early, like 3 a.m. and don't finish work until a lot of time, like 9 or 10. but I do not mind at all. Like, I've been going on filming for like the last months, literally getting up and then finishing that time every day, and then you'd be surprised how that could crash you, but it didn't. I just really happy that I'm here and I do what I do. Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks very much. Hi everyone, my name is Sam Frosterhan. I'm 23. I was born in Singapore to a Chinese mother and a European New Zealander father. I moved to New Zealand when I was 2, grew up in a dairy farm down in South Canterbury, and I actually remember the first day of school as well. It was a rural school down in South Canterbury. This is back in, I think, 1998 or 1999. And it was my mum and myself, and of course my mum's full Asian. And we walked past the school gate, and it was lunchtime, you see. And as we were walking through, literally the kids like dropped whatever they were doing. They ran to the school fence, the gate, and they just like holding the gate and just went completely silent. And we're just like looking at us as we're walking through. So, you know, for them, it would have been, you know, the first probably Asians they've probably ever seen. So back then, Mum tried to teach me some Mandarin and some Chinese, because she can speak a little bit, but just because I was surrounded by, you know, like scrawny white kids all day, that was probably the least of my priorities, was just trying to fit in, you know, with the local culture. So fast forward 18 years, I choose to take it up at University of Canterbury, that's where I'm from, and I studied it for my first year at Mandarin, and then the opportunity came up for me to go over to Shanghai, and I applied for the Prime Minister's Scholarship for Asia, the PMSA, which you alluded to, 400. And I applied for that, I got it. They paid for my whole entire time over there. And I went and actually studied at Shanghai University of Finance and Economics, Shanghai Taipei Dashi. And I was there for 5.5 months. And what it really did was it kind of transformed what it was for just to learn a language, which I admit was for quite selfish reasons, because I thought, okay, China's an emerging market, like this could be really good for my career, so I'll take it. But actually it ended up being so much more than that. It's actually, you learn the language, you learn the culture, you meet people, and I think, looking back now, that was the greatest thing that ever happened. So while I was over there, I actually made a little video. It's about 1.5 to 2 minutes, and I've loaded it up on the screen, and I'm just going to play it for you. So I'll just do it really quickly. It is. Since then, I've been back to Shanghai 5 times, just because I really love it, and the people there, I've still got friends there, and yeah, that was just taking on Bund. It's my favourite place in the world. But I think, like, if there was a learn to take from it, obviously I went to Shanghai, you saw in there a lot of Chinese friends, but also international friends. I think if I was to do it again, however, as a learn, I would probably go to a smaller city. Like we talked today about the 3rd and the 4th tier cities if you're going for trade or entrepreneurship, because the big cities are quite saturated. And it's almost the same for like language learning as well, because those cities are full of expats, you know, English-speaking expats. So I think if there was one bit of advice, it'd be to be strategic and intentional about exactly what program and what city you go to in China. So for me, if I was to do it again, I'd go to a smaller city with less foreigners and more maybe Chinese that I could interact with daily. But it depends what you're doing it for. If you want to just go for work opportunities, a big city like Shanghai, Beijing would be cool. But for language learning, I definitely recommend a smaller city. So that's all for me.
I think you've only done a little bit of the talk.
3 months in a few different cities, and sort of the aim of learning the language, practicing using the language in day-to-day life, and really, yeah, as the others have touched on, getting a cultural sense of China, because I got a long way through uni and realised I'd invested a lot of time in something I wasn't sure if I had got a long-term interest in how I felt about the country, so I thought I'd go over there and go get hands-on and see how it went. So I spent 3 months studying in a city called Kunming in the southwest, which is sort of so far southwest that it's north of Vietnam. It's at 2,000 meters altitude, and it's beautiful. It's sunny almost every day. I think we had 1 or 2 days rain in the 8 weeks I was there. But the problem with altitude is that you climb a flight of stairs and you feel quite out of breath and you have to ask some questions about your fitness. So I studied at Yunnan Daxue, so I did a 6-week language course, which actually counts as a paper at Auckland University, which was really good. So I got to tick a box in terms of my degree requirements here. And so very similar to language study that I did in New Zealand, was focused on reading and writing and speaking. And it was a really good opportunity to take the classroom learning and use it every day with all the, going out for food or travel or whatever it might be. So it was a perfect, balance between taking the classroom learnings and going into the day-to-day life. With really good teachers who not only provided really good teaching, but gave us lots of insights into things to do while we were in Kunming, all sorts of places to go and things to eat and all that sort of stuff. So that was really good. When we were there, we lived on campus, or sort of just on campus, in a dormitory, which was, the best part about that was it's on this bustling street that's got night markets and restaurants everywhere, and so it means that at all hours of the day, really, China sort of runs from 10 a.m. until about 1 a.m. in my experience, but it meant that all hours of the day there were people around, people to talk to, places to go, which was awesome. So we'd just go out walking and meet people and all that sort of thing. So that was really cool. I think one of the best things that I found was just how friendly people were. We made really good friends with a range of people that I still keep in contact with. We had one of our friends took us out for Christmas dinner because by that point there were sort of 17 of us total from Auckland Uni that started, but some people were only doing a 4-week course, so by Christmas time there was only 4 of us left. So it was, we went up into this amazing 48-story building with a big nice restaurant up there for Christmas dinner with our local friend. So yeah, it was really cool the way that the people that you met helped you, experience things even more than you would otherwise if you were just traveling by yourself. I want to touch on what Sam said about the smaller scale cities being really good for learning language and culture as well, but there was very little English in Kunming, so it was quite good from our perspective that we couldn't use English if we wanted to. People would just, if there was something you didn't know how to say in Chinese, you really had to figure it out. So that was perfect for us, really. It made such a difference in terms of language confidence and pure language learning, that we could, all those day-to-day things that you think you know how to say, but you don't quite know how the interaction goes. It's a great way to learn because you just have to get out there and do it. In Shanghai, I did a 1-month internship with the warehouse. So New Zealand warehouse, they have a representative office in Shanghai, so they essentially do all the sourcing, or 90% of the sourcing for all the stores here. So that was really interesting, and I was essentially on a rotation through the merchandising team. So I was just figuring out all the ways that they interface between China and New Zealand, and how they, all their processes and the way they deal with suppliers in China, and the way they transport all the goods that they need to transport back down to New Zealand. And yeah, so that was really interesting. I got to visit a couple of factories while I was there, which was pretty mind-blowing. One factory we went to, which was a hardware and automotive factory, had over 1 million products that they make in this one factory, and the sales director that was taking us around knew how all the products that we encountered sold, what markets they sold in, what countries they sold in, how they could customize them, how they could bundle them up so they, like a bunch of hammers, they could put them in a Father's Day package, and they'd done it before, and it was selling really well in France, but not so well elsewhere. It was incredible the amount of knowledge that he had on their products, but even though there was 1 million individual things that they made. So that was really interesting. Shanghai itself was amazing. much the same as Sam, really, really loved my time in Shanghai. Going from a city like Kunming, where you feel like you're very much a part of things day to day, Shanghai is quite different. You feel like you're a little bit of a drop in the ocean there because there's just so much going on. It's such a huge city, there's so many people. But at the same time, it was no less friendly in my experiences than anywhere else, and you still felt like you had very real relationships with people and all that sort of thing. So that was really cool. I spent a lot of time just getting on the subway and going exploring random parts of the city, walking into random restaurants and bars and places I hadn't been to before. And yeah, it was the first time I lived by myself, so that was quite interesting. But it was really good because I just had so much freedom to go and explore. I was living in Hong Kong, which is north of the river. And so I travelled down to Huangpu every day by subway. It was super easy. It was quite frustrating being back in Auckland. So yeah, so hopefully I'll be able to move back over there soon. Because, if not for the anything else, the public transport was certainly a lot better. I actually had a really amazing experience while I was in Shanghai. A friend I met while I was at the internship invited me to have Chinese New Year dinner with him and his family. So that was really cool. So I got to experience a Chinese New Year kick-off dinner and spend some time in like a local's house, which is always really interesting, I think. After my time in Shanghai, I travelled down the East Coast. So I went to Shenzhen, Guangzhou, back to Shenzhen, and then out to Hong Kong before I flew home, which was really cool. And it was much of the same, really. While I was in the city, I would just get on the subway and go and explore, maybe do a little bit of research about certain tourist areas that they would go to, all that kind of thing. So it was really, really cool. I thought Shenzhen was awesome, so hopefully go back there as well. It was a very dynamic city. It's kind of halfway between, I think, Shanghai and somewhere like Kunming, where it's still got a lot of the, I don't know how to describe it really, a lot of the kind of smaller city feel to it, even though it's huge. But it's also got a lot of opportunity business-wise and otherwise for anyone that's interested. I think they call it the hardware capital of the world, just because of the amount of development and innovation and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's a really cool city. I was only in Guangzhou for one night. I actually visited a friend of a friend who's a Kiwi who owns a restaurant there. And he was kind of like, come down to Guangzhou and I'll give you a meal. So that sounded pretty good. And yeah, it was a really good night. I didn't see much of the city because we was kind of just there to see a friend. But yeah, there's a New Zealand-owned restaurant in Guangzhou if anyone's sitting there anytime soon. They do great food. So after that, I went back to Shenzhen for another night and then out to Hong Kong where I spent 5 days. Hong Kong's completely different again. It's just such an incredibly lively, dense city. There's just so much going on there and so much money, and it's crazy. Every second car seems to be a Tesla. Yeah, it was really, really cool. But again, there I was just a tourist, so I was just kind of walking around exploring, going to markets. Managed to get a really good bit of advice. There's like a fishing villagey area in Hong Kong called Sai Kung. So I went out there and spent a day walking around, and that was really beautiful. Went to Darfur, the Big Buddha, all those kind of things. So yeah, managed to tick a few touristy boxes. I climbed up right up past the kind of tourist balcony at Victoria Peak and sat up on one of the hills, watched the sun go down, so that was quite cool. So as I've touched on, I think all the cities that I went to I kind of got a good look at the range of cities that there are in China. So there's much smaller cities through to somewhere like Shanghai, which is just so big you can't really understand it. It's yeah. So I thought it was a really good experience from my perspective to be able to see a range of different things and what the opportunities are, and the kind of appeal of going to different places. Yeah, so I think that's most of what I want to say. Yeah, it was quite good to be able to do a balance of study and work alongside it. So that's my experience.
Thank you, Drew.
Memories and a lot of gym memberships, and I do not want that.
So 不要 is no in Chinese, so you do get quite a bit of that and you need to learn. And the reason why I asked you is I just suddenly remembered about, it was you talking about the restaurant, and I remembered I had this friend who travelled to China with his work colleagues. He's Māori, and then he came back and we talked about China one day, and he said to me, he said, oh look, I just have to ask you this question, but I didn't want to ask my colleague because I thought it was rude. But everywhere he go, he kept saying nigger, 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 nigger. And I was like, oh. And he's like, I felt inappropriate to ask why he kept saying nigger. But why? But nigger is actually na in Chinese, means that. So that's a very common word that a lot of foreigners use when you point to menus or when you point to a taxi and you would just go nigger. But for a lot of foreigners, that's a bad word to learn.
Yeah, I remember my first year at University of Otago studying, it must have been my first tutorial. We had one guy in our class who was black, and she was going around asking questions, and she went, oh, nigger, nigger, nigger. It was just traumatized. He thankfully been to China before, so he knew. He was just laughing away in our faces.
Yeah, that's a good. All right, okay. So I will let you go, but if anyone else has any questions for our other speakers. Thank you, Imogen. Have a safe flight. Okay, I didn't actually get to ask you any questions, so I will. Well, when do you graduate?
I actually I'll hopefully do like a non-degree course at Fudan University. So that's focused on international business, language study, and they give you like work experience at the same time. So that'll be really interesting. And then hopefully go to Shenzhen and do like an internship or find something. So that's the plan. That's the moment, yeah.
Any plans for how many years that you stay in China?
I'm not 100% sure yet. At this point, I kind of want to go for as long as I can. I'm not 100% sure how long it'll end up being, but I'm looking at doing about 9 months worth of organised things and then hopefully travel to some places I'm looking to yet. I feel like I missed a lot of the northwestern areas.
Yeah, in the central areas as well.
Yeah, exactly. I only just sort of stopped off in Zhangjiajie for 3 days, 4 days. So there's lots of China that I have yet to see, which is
You know that the longer that you stay in China as a foreigner holding a foreigner passport, for you to stay in China you need to go through a lot of the administrative process, and eventually you'll get this license or this certificate to prove who you are, and it's called the Aliens ID.
right.
Do you know that?
No.
Well, there is actually this document that on the cover actually says Aliens Identification Card. It proves that you are a foreigner who's received the right to stay in China after certain years, after certain work experience, and you've paid enough tax, but you'll be officially an alien.
I'm technically already an alien because I was born in the UK, but didn't live there for long enough to get a British passport.
Oh, God.
So they call me an alien Kiwi, so I guess I'm an alien in the 2 countries.
Great. Okay. So anyone have any questions? Oh, there we go.
Question about working in China. So I know in the thing Sam that you've done an internship as well. What would you say like the main difference between like a New Zealand workplace and workplace in China would be?
So good. All right. So one of the biggest differences that struck me. So I did an internship in Shenzhen as well, and I was working for a German electronics company for I think a month and a half. And so they've got a whole lot of Chinese workers, working on the computers and things. And so at lunchtime, everyone goes on lunch at like 12:30, and then they go eat. It's about an hour, and they come back. But when they come back, they don't start work. So this is like an hour later. They all have, when you go onto the plane and like have these things around your neck so you don't like strain your neck. Everyone's got those, and they just like lounge on their chairs and just sleep. They sleep for literally like half an hour, 45 minutes. So I'm sitting there ready to get back into work. I'm like, what do I do? I don't want to sleep. I have to start that. So that's probably one of the biggest differences, I guess. Yeah. But I think the work culture is quite, they really hone in on the work culture, especially quite late at night. So in New Zealand, it's very, like 9 to 5, do not ask me to do anything after 5 because I'm going home. But in China, it's like you really put your work first almost to an extent, and you can work, you know, like till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, depending on what's happening in the office. So I guess that's one of the other differences. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, some of you are staying. Oh, there we go.
I have a question about the actual study. So, I know that you've had learning experiences by meeting friends and going out and eating and travelling and things like that, but actually about, and I know a lot of young people who would be thinking about going to China to study worry about how competitive it is, and can we keep up as New Zealand students? How did you actually find your academic studies?
So for me, while I was in Kunming, the first 4 weeks of our program were in classes that were specifically for the course we were running. So we weren't sort of competing with other students, but in the same sense we were still getting a feel for the Chinese learning environment. And I was, on the way there I was sort of feeling quite nervous about exactly the same things. Would I be able to keep up? Is my Chinese good enough? All these kind of things. But I found, and I think across the board, a lot of the people or everyone that was with me, we all sort of surprised ourselves, I guess, by how much you do actually know, and how much, when you're given the opportunity to really, live and breathe China, then it's really motivating in terms of how much effort you're putting into what you're doing. So I thought we all kind of held up really well, and the assessments and the type of learning we were doing was all reasonably similar to what we do here. So it wasn't unfamiliar. It was just kind of different classrooms, different teachers, those sort of things. So I thought it stacked up quite well.
See, I was a little bit less studious. So we had a little deal that we had with all our friends, and because for our program anyway, I'm not sure about you guys, but you literally got a pass or a fail, and that is what got translated to your transcript back at Canterbury University. So we had this competition amongst all the international students who could get the lowest score over a 60 pass mark, so that we could spend our weekends literally traveling around the country. So like just doing enough work, but like making sure we still pass. 62.5. Yeah, let's keep that internal. Shut that off the camera. Fun times.
Well, for me, I studied here, so most of you, I think, who are here at Student University of Auckland. I can only compare because I came here, as I was saying, too young. I didn't study at university in China, but what I took from studying here was there's a lot of self-learning. In China, it was we call rote learning. So you get told what to study, and you memorize it, which I hate. So I'm glad I came to New Zealand. I guess one point I didn't quite touch on, so I say that is there is no, education is no borders, but which also extends in my personal experiences. If you want to learn something, go out there, get a book, learn it. Not saying as you don't need to go to university, but you don't need to go to university to study something you're interested in. I have been, since I finished uni, just getting my certificates on the side. Anything I have a vague interest in terms of sports education, I just go and spend some time either reading or learning about it, or just get into the work environment and actually work with people who are very, experienced in that field. I guess that applies to everybody. So learning is forever. These days I'm still learning on, even I'm not accountant or anything, because for my own business I have to do accounts. And I'm learning how to use Excel properly. You'll be surprised. Like the if brackets, true value, whatever, all those formulas, I don't know whether you know what I'm talking about. Yes, if you have studied accounting, which I haven't at university because my mom's accountant, I found that awfully boring. Personal. So yeah, that's, I think for me, university training is great. It gets you to think in a certain way. I'm grateful, but then again, you can study anytime, anywhere you want.
I want to ask you, Sam, when you went to China, all you talk about is the good things or you feel happy. Is there anything you feel inconvenient, or you think they can to improve themselves to make you feel comfortable to leave or stay there? Just maybe reading or studying or making friends, and anyhow.
Yeah, interesting that you say that. One of the, I guess, the biggest culture shocks for me was, going into China, how their accommodation is set up. So in New Zealand, it's very much, if you go into a hall, you get your own room, right? It's one person per room. In China, it's like 2, 4, 6, 8, even sometimes more. So I was quite fortunate in that I only had just me and another roommate, so 2 to a room. But coming from New Zealand, that was just so weird. Like they put, guys together and girls together, but it's still just like, just so different from what I'd been used to. Like, I think my brother and I shared a room, but like, when I turned like 10, I moved out, it's kind of such a big boy there. But yeah, I think that was the biggest shock. And then getting used to each other's sort of lifestyle and, was that? Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that was probably the biggest one. But I think for a lot of Chinese, it's very, very, very normal. So it's having to learn it, be truly immersed in Chinese culture, because it's like a living situation. Getting over that, I think, would have been the biggest challenge. Yeah. Thoughts?
I've got 2 little stories about the only time I had an argument in China. When I got off the plane in Zhangjiajie, to leave the airport you have to go in a vehicle, and so I had to get in a taxi, and I was like, okay, I'm going from here to Wulingyuan. He's like, okay, cool. Started driving, and I knew how much it was meant to cost to get there. I'd been told what the market fare was, and he tried to charge me 3 times. So it's like an hour-long drive. And so it was meant to be 150 yuan, and he sort of quoted about 350. And so by this point, my bags were in the boot of the taxi. I was in the car, and the car was driving along quite rural roads in China. So I didn't have a lot of options, but I managed to somehow negotiate him down by telling him that my friend would just come and pick me up. So I don't know why he believed that I had a friend that wasn't already picking me up, but so I only had to end up paying like 180 or something. So. Somewhat successful. And the second one, the only other time that I was quite unsure what was going on, I went to get a haircut while I was in Shanghai, and so I went and sat down, and then I got brought like a nice glass of warm water and some fruit, and I was like, okay, that's cool, I'm not planning on being here for too long, but thank you very much. And then I got full head massage. They washed my hair about 5 times. I don't know if that was a hint for me or what, but and then I got full massage, which included being smacked with a hairbrush. So that was, I mean, it wasn't a bad experience at all. And it's quite a good story, and I really enjoyed it. But when I started getting hit with a hairbrush, I was a little bit unsure about what was going on. So but 15 New Zealand dollars, but I was there for about an hour and a half, so so dinner was slightly later than I was expecting it to be that night, but it was interesting.
How was the haircut?
Not too bad.
Didn't actually do it.
One thing I realised when I got a haircut in Shanghai, their sizing, so if like for guys, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, their sizing is 1 below. So in New Zealand, I usually kind of get a 1 around the size because I'm quite short, but a 1 there is literally like skinny. Yeah, exactly. So this was around Christmas time. We had a Christmas party that night, and I turned up with no hair. I had like this ugly muffin top on top. So I wore that Santa hat for quite a few days.
One last question because we need to wrap up.
Do you guys know any local dialects, or have any wish to learn any local dialects?
When you say local means either China or New Zealand? Sorry. Yes, I mean, I was born speaking a dialect of Dalian, but it's very similar to Mandarin. I guess you would feel, I mean, you can't help it. I think I have a lot of friends who spend time in China and learning Chinese, and they'll come back speaking their accent that dialect. I mean, you don't really have a choice. Everyone can speak Mandarin, especially in school or university, but when you go out interacting with crowds or buying, shopping, whatever, they all speak that dialect. So, yeah. And what dialect do we have in New Zealand? We have northern and southern accent, don't we?
Yeah, I thought I was trying to learn Shanghainese while I was in Shanghai, but man, it's so different. It's so different. I was in an office and it's like 110 people, and 7 of them were foreigners. So everyone was local Chinese essentially, and they were all from Shanghai. So they do all their conversations in Shanghainese, and I'd just be sitting there having no idea what they're talking about because it sounds so different from Mandarin. And I was trying to pick it up, but yeah, it's like learning a whole other language really. It's whereas when I was in Kunming, their dialect is, at least it sounds like Mandarin. So yeah, I got a few more sort of phrases out of Kunming and Shanghai.
Yeah, Shanghai was the same. I had a local Shanghai friend, and literally all I can remember was Nong Ho, which I think is Ni Hao. No, and thank you for Xie is Shazan. Yeah, so that's literally all I can remember. But there you go.
All right, I think the showdown is actually a very good wrap up for the session today. But thank you all. A round of applause for all these brave